What's up, good people of TW Local 100, and welcome to another installment of our video series. This is on, we're going to talk about the upcoming elections. We're transit workers for a fighting union, and we're letting you know that you should vote for us. We have two candidates running for the E-Board, for train operator E-Board. You got Richard Latanzi, and for TA surface maintenance, you got Thomas Cowperthwaite. And well, this election season, it's been rather interesting. I mean, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of people running, and there's the usual mudflinging and attacks on union democracy. Indeed, one of the things that's been very serious is like two of the main oppositions, the Stronger Together slate and Progressive Action, respectively, have their historic leaders are actually up for some serious discipline. So we want to first and foremost say that we in Transit Workers for a Fighting Union, we take a stand against the company and we defend both Tramell Thompson and Evangeline Byers against these attacks by the company. These are politically motivated attacks, and they're certainly encouraged by the current leadership in the union, who actually fears, people actually running against them. I mean, something as simple as that. Excuse me. So anyhow, one of the things that happened a lot while we were campaigning was that, a lot of people were asking us, well, why don't you guys just link up with, with the slate? Why don't you guys have a slate, or like hook up with Evangeline, hook up with Tramell or whatever? And we just weren't doing that, because if you've paid attention to our leaflets that we posted up all over the place and our previous videos that we made, we are putting forward a political program that is designed to advance the interests of transit workers in their struggles to get, whether it's higher pay, to defeat the Taylor Law, the fight on all these various arenas is generally to advance. How do you advance? And like what's on offer right now in all the these various slates that are going on, we do not see a single candidate that actually lays out the groundwork or has a roadmap or a strategy to actually defeat the bosses. And on that basis, we cannot give any support to any of them. As of right now, we are advocating for a long-term view, because I know everyone is frustrated down there with the way things have been in the union. And I really wish there was someone that we can support down there. Really wish there was some candidate for president that we can give some support to oust this treacherous leadership that we've been saddled with for decades now at this point. So to get more into it, let me cede the floor to Tom. Should I list the various oppositions, or
Let's do.
Yeah, I might as well just say, all right. So we got members first, aka members last. These are the incumbents. We don't need to actually get into everybody knows why they suck. I'm not gonna get into details on that. There's the Fight for Freedom, which is not Fight for Freedom, Fight for Our Futures. The Mike Cordero slate. There's Progressive Action, which historically is associated with Tramell Thompson. The Stronger Together slate, which is Evangeline Byers, which has actually made some significant inroads in the recent period. United Invincible, that's primarily TA surface. And then there's like various divisional slates and independents. There is, for example, like Local 100 Fightback, which is running a number of independent candidates as well. So it's really an alphabet soup out there of all these different groups. So anyways, let me cede the floor to Tom.
Thanks. Well, I'm hailing from TA Surface and Brooklyn bus depots. When we were out there, everyone's seen the flyers of all the different flyers. Ours contrasts very favorably, in my opinion, to all of them. Most of the others are generic slogans, which no one can disagree with, even the incumbents. And then a lot of pretty pictures. Some of these slates actually have programs like Cordero that are almost identical with the existing bureaucracy existing misleaders. Some are just pretty pictures and good guys, and that's it. But we have a program, and our program was detailed and also unique, and really we clarified our position of cost independence. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Stronger Together, the buyers slate, because they do talk, she has talked about fighting the MTA, about repudiating the sellout leadership, sometimes about reforming the Taylor Law. But is their real program different than the existing Samuelson, Utano, Davis bureaucracy? Unfortunately, it really isn't. Now, how would you know that? Well, one of the most clear examples was Evangeline's fulsome or total support for the Hoco Liber subway safety plan, which flooded the subways and buses with cops. This is just music to the ears of any politician in this town, and the company included, because their reasons for flooding the subway with cops are really not to protect either sub-transit workers or the riders. It was to, make sure everyone paid their fare, and also put a big, clamp down on society in general. Those same cops, will be used against labor when they have to be used against labor, when we struggle for what we need. There's also only slightly hidden support for Democrats. So when Biden took a pass and Kamala, went on board, Evangeline was, very explicit in her support that Kamala was going to be the next, the future of protecting democracy in the United States. And maybe even more glaringly, over and over again, she's been threatening, both suing and threatening to sue the union in the bosses' courts, and dragging our union into the labor department, and also bringing in officials to clean up the union, saying that the labor department should oversee our elections. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about why that's such a terrible idea. But I have talked to her, and like I say, if like Eddie inferred, if a slate like that was actually to break completely with both of the capitalist parties, both the Democrats and Republicans, was to really promise and pledge to build the union as an independent force and wage real struggle against the bosses, then we could, conceive of giving them critical support for sure. Wow. We would like to see that, but right now that's not the case. One wonders if some of these slates would just want to get off the tools and onto the gravy train. And so we can expand on some of these points, but that's my impression from the ground in buses.
Yeah, that's kind of funny you mentioned the gravy train point, because there's a long-standing kind of joke in RTO. In RTO, there's always this, we always kind of get the short end of the stick, especially when there's like negotiations and whatnot. That's goes a long time. But the joke is that, when you have these candidates running, only is basically get me off the D train and get me onto the gravy train. The only time you ever see the candidates, you ever see the union largely, is like when there's an election time or when you get in trouble. So it just breeds like a serious amount of cynicism, and you just see it play itself out. I think there's kind of like this cycle that they all go through, and so, maybe Rich, you could address like this is not what we're about, like you have like this instance, like, I don't know, this trajectory that everybody seems to cycle through. Like maybe they start off with Local 100 Fight Back, and they go to then they break from that and they go to Progressive Action, use that as an electoral video, and once they get into office, they forget all that stuff and they go right into the arms of Richie Davis, Utano, Samuelson, whatever, what have you. It breeds cynicism, and it's messed up. It needs to change.
Yeah, Tom and I were talking earlier, and there's also a gravy bus, so I'm sure he can tell you about that too. But yeah, it's the phenomenon is union wide, but we do see it in subways especially, and honestly, like I got it a little bit too when I was out there talking to people and trying to convince them to get me on the ballot. I had a union brother ask me, I saw all these guys, I vote for them, and then they elevate, and then they they sit behind a desk and they kick their feet up. What's to say you won't do the same? That was asked of me, and frankly, that's a fair question, because in addition to cynicism, it's also what they've observed for the past decades or however long you're in the industry. It's been kind of the pattern for a lot of different formations, as Eddie said, and that's certainly progressive action is no exception to that pattern too. While they have had a very kind of oppositional posture for a very long time since their inception. Kind of what Tom was saying, if you pay attention to like what they do and not so much what they say, I remember that, Logel, who's still in the union, although he's not in a particular title right now. I guess he's an advisor to the union.
I think it's last I heard.
Yeah, last I heard. But like he left his former post a little bit disliked by the membership.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit. Let's just put it that way.
Just a bit.
But okay. But he ran on the Progressive Action ticket when he got his position. Canela Gomez, and again, can't be stressed enough that the victimization of Trammell Thompson and Evangeline Byers by the company and by our existing union leadership is wrong. They should, in the case of Trammell, he should be put back to his tools if he wants to come back to work. He should be defended by our union. If I could put it simply, it's because if there's a dispute between the company and a union member, you always side with the union member. Let me put it to you that way.
Mm-hmm.
ABCs.
And whatever political disagreements exist, it's union business. It's for the union, which is the membership, to decide who will lead. So, like, boss is out.
Absolutely.
But back to your point, Eddie. So, Canela Gomez, he ran on the Progressive Action ticket before he got his post. And as you know, he was central in kind of the incident that happened at Bedford Park with Trammell Thompson, which was a pretty criminal incident. But Progressive Action as a formation, it's not really, it's you can contrast it to us because it is kind of based on it's not really based on a principled base. It's not really formed on a principled basis like our formation is. Like if you have been reading our stuff, you've been seeing our videos, like we kind of begin with the principle of class independence. That's kind of where we're starting. One of our principles.
And class struggle.
And class struggle. And from there, do we begin to see who's like-minded, who is out there who kind of would like to see perhaps the union struggle using its own strength and its own organization and its own interest against the company and against the state. And then from there, that's how we are thinking of building it, and not the other way around, which is whoever wants to get on board, don't split the vote, which is toxic because it just makes the questions more muddy and more confusing for the membership. So with this election cycle, one example of that kind of happening was with like Local 100 Fightback. Historically, they've kind of run independently, but this year they ran with the Progressive Action ticket for a time. And then they did remove themselves from the Progressive Action slate, and they're running as independents, Local 100 Fightback, and they had a statement explaining why they did that. And I don't know if you read it. I did. And if you read it, they say that they parted ways with Progressive Action because of specifically Trammell Thompson's actions of sharing a stage with Donald Trump.
And for them, Trump's a fascist.
And for Local 100 Fightback, Trump is a fascist. That's their position. But also they're encouraging us, Local 100, to vote for Kamala Harris, the Democrat, who lost, and also is a Democrat. I don't understand how voting for Kamala Harris will help us to win even the most basic of our needs. That's a question, I guess, for Local 100 Fightback. But, I mean, if you read their statement, how I read it was they broke with Progressive Action because they supported the wrong boss's political party, like not per se because they wanted the working class to fight independently of the boss's parties. So it just kind of shows you kind of the a principle basis on which they've kind of They kind of form it. And again, this is apart from the individuals in progressive action. I'm talking about a political strategy they have that they share.
They say it buys us. It buys the workers time.
It buys the workers time for what? I mean, how much?
100,000 Palestinians dead.
I know, exactly.
I don't know.
I mean, it's the problem is not a question of timing. It's a question of how are we going to fight to get what we need?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a political question. What is the strategy to move forward? And the strategy of progressive action, which is politically not distinct from the existing leadership, is a losing strategy. So if you want a different strategy, good news, this election cycle, you have two options, albeit just for the executive board, but from small beginnings may come great things. But again, where a campaign starts from a very staunch, principled perspective, and that's kind of where we're starting from. So, and those two options are, to be clear, myself, Richard Latanzi, and Tom in buses.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what you guys have been talking about is a tendency that I'm sure is seen in unions across the country, has been for years.
Absolutely.
But what makes us different is we're political people with political conceptions who are, completely resolute about our support for advancing the interests of the working class. And we know that any gain that the working class has won, and we as transit workers and the rest, has been because of bullheaded struggle against the bosses and their state. Now, a lot of oppositions over the last few decades especially have decided that the way they fight internally in their union is to drag the union into the boss's courts or to drag the boss's government agencies like the Labor Department right into the unions. I alluded to this before, but because of Evangeline's statement that the Labor Department should oversee our elections. Well, we've seen how this plays out time and time again. The Labor Department chieftain right now, I think, is Julie Sue. She's been paraded around the country or sent around the country to put out hotspots to make sure to try to strong arm many different workforces, rail, longshore, auto, and most recently Boeing, to try to strong arm them into ending their strikes before a clear victory has been won. A clear victory that would really benefit the entire class. Like, for example, getting a pension for the newer workers at Boeing. That would have been a huge success. And that also shows what side the Democratic Party is on. These are people you don't go to clean up your own union. You don't even go to the local courthouse to do it because the local judge is allied with the local Chamber of Commerce or the Wall Street bankers, and they know which side you're on. The bourgeoisie or the rulers, they know how to bide their time, and as soon as the labor leader who they thought could keep things under control finally decides to call a strike, that's the time that the hammer comes down, and you believe they'll all end up in jail. So that's why we don't support union suing. We don't support dragging our unions into through these agencies, and we're for a simple way of saying this is labor's got to clean its own house. Workers, we got to clean up our own organizations. So that's another aspect of working class independence. And let me underscore that we're talking a lot about the opposition now, but the incumbents, the members last folks that are in office, they all came to power this way too. They have no principles at all whatsoever either. So we would like to see a real different kind of leadership leading our union and leading the rest of labor. It's a difficult task, but it's a necessary task. And I think a lot of what we talk about speaks to the workers who we're talking to, both in buses and in trains. We just need to gather those forces for the hard struggles that are ahead. And we know that we're going into a really difficult period, and we're going to need a new leadership. So we're not going away. We want to get on the executive board. We also want to eventually run the union. And to run the unions, and also help out working people everywhere. So stick with us on this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage everyone to check us out if you see us on the job, or check us out on social media. I mean, this has been a lot of food for thought. And, as Tom said, we're going into a new era right now, Things have fundamentally changed in this country, and things cannot go on as they did before. You cannot fight what's going to happen right now under Trump with the same old methods as before. It's going to require a very different strategy, and we are for building the strongest possible union, bringing all these disparate sections together into one fist to fight forward, to fight for our livelihoods, and to advance our interests, not only of us, but the entire working class in this country. So on that score, I just want to remind everyone those ballots are going to be going out, and please take a look where it says independence right there. Mark a little X right there for Richard Latanzi and Tom Cowperswaite.
Don't vote for the slates.
Yeah, don't vote for the slates. Vote for us. And with that, bid you a good night.
Good night.